All right, so we're here with Cory Parella. It's October 2nd. We have midterms elections coming up. He's running for House District 42 on the Republican side. And a little bit of housekeeping. I just want people to know kind of like why I'm doing this. So I'm doing this primarily to educate, to learn, to share, just to be reality, keep things real, because I've just noticed in media that's kind of starting to, everything is based on money. So this is primarily a civil service. It just is a civil service, and I will never let money affect my views.
Did you get that $1,000 I sent you? Please keep going.
Okay, so this is, so a little bit of house cleaning. I also just wanted to recommend some good podcasts to people. Hopefully you have some good podcasts to recommend to us. If you write them in the comments, comment section, that would be great. This is also being recorded on Clubhouse. The nice thing about Clubhouse, I'm actually going to start recording Aurora City Council meetings on Clubhouse, because Clubhouse has its social audio media. So it allows you to not only talk to other people audio, but it also allows you to, there's a the chat box where you can type and comment on what's happening. Of course, with the Aurora City Council, they have the YouTube channel, the Aurora channel. I recommend all of you subscribe to the Aurora channel so you can follow the committee meetings on what's going on in Aurora with the Aurora City Council. And also you can tune in to the Aurora City Council regular meetings and the Aurora City Council study sessions, but the chat box is turned off on that, so you're not allowed to comment. So if we start recording those meetings on Clubhouse, you will be able to comment in the chat section. So podcasts that I recommend to you guys for philosophy, history, spirituality, politics are, I don't know if you've heard of this, Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, Lex Friedman. And also, if you want to learn more about cryptocurrencies, I definitely recommend Charles Hoskinson, who is the CEO of Cardano, which is one of the biggest cryptocurrencies. He's based out of Longmont, Colorado. He has his own YouTube channel. I recommend Bitcoin Magazine. It's a good place to go to learn more about Bitcoin. And then also for altcoins, you can go to Alt Daily. There's a really good entertaining and also financial business podcast called the All In Podcast as well. But so yeah, just we'd love to see which podcasts you're interested in as well. So we're here with Cory Parella today. He's running for House District 42 in Aurora, Colorado, for the State House Representatives, State
It's
Assembly.
a long title, isn't it? It's a long title.
Yeah, State House Rep. And it seems to me that Cory is very well, he has a good sense of humor, which is something we're kind of lacking these days in politics and just in general. It's always good to have a sense of humor. Yeah, I want to learn more about you, Cory. Also, yeah, Republican Party. But there's just one question that I always ask everyone in the beginning, because I think this is really important in life. Give us a situation. All right, well, first of all, I just want to thank you for doing this, and we're at the what's it called, the Green Village, I think, Center, which is right in, basically right just south of House District 42. We're in House District 41.
That's right. We're about 10 feet south into 41.
Yeah, just south, like basically Mississippi and Chambers. It's a great park. If you live near here, I recommend bringing your kids here. There's a pool, there's a playground, there's tennis courts,
there's trees,
there's fresh air, the great outdoors. But yeah, so going back to that, Cory, my question, we face this in life a lot, adversity. But can you give us a time in your life when you faced some real adversity, and how did it change? How did it change you? How did it change your perspective on life? Like, was there a life-changing incident that changed you, and how did it change you? And
I think adversity can come in many forms, obviously. I'm trying to think of one moment that caused a redirect for me. And I think the one that I'm gonna share here, for those of you who don't believe in God, you're missing out. For those of us who talk to him every day and pray, I'm gonna share this one. I call it my John McCain story. And I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, hence the ASU shirt, but I grew up a diehard Arizona Wildcat fan. I just watched them beat the Buffaloes last night as they're both rebuilding their program, so I was enjoying the college football scene. Adversity, I grew up with John McCain in my district. It was McCain, Dennis T. Cancini, and I think Jim Colby. And none of these guys look good on TV. So when people said, do you like politicians? I'm like, ugh, no way. Because they all said I should think about that. My mind was on chasing the footsteps of Mr. Spielberg and Lucas. They were the heroes of my childhood. When it comes to adversity, my mind goes to a time and a place where my early college days didn't work out. I didn't get my first bachelor's degree until 2011. At that time, I had 3 kids. I was a non-traditional graduate. My earliest days were so difficult. The NAFTA plan that the Clinton administration put into effect all but destroyed the job market when I was getting out of high school. So there I was, very discouraged, very unskilled, despite the fact that I had 10 years of Spanish and drama, and I was one of the few nationally awarded Rapier and Dagger stage actors at age 18. I was relatively unemployable, and it was sad. So there I was, very discouraged, and I got the news from all places, from the newspaper, meaning it wasn't word of mouth from friends, that a close friend of mine in high school had been murdered on a strange incident where she went on a trip to Romania and was taking a tour around Europe. And now in her Christian fellowship, so to speak, at Calvary Chapel in Tucson, they would get together and have fun, and it was non-romantic. It was platonic in most cases. So she had this guy that was from Croatia, I think, and they would say, hey, love you too. And in the United States English, that's considered a relaxed slang. Well, he took it as, I love you too, Princess Bride style. Had invitations for a wedding drawn up, and when she came over, the parents welcomed her as their new daughter-in-law. And she said, I'm not marrying you, you misunderstood. She tried to get out of there, and needless to say, she went to sleep. She couldn't change out her tickets, couldn't change anything. She was murdered by a weight dumbbell by this guy, and then he hung himself in the bathroom. We got news of that. This was about 2-3 days later in, I want to say, December of 1996. And I was devastated because this is a young lady who had prayed with me as I lost my dad to cancer when I was 17. When I think of Dad, I get choked up. So tears start to flow. You'll know why. So there I was, and I walked into a Protestant church. I was raised Catholic. I walked into a Protestant church for the first time ever because of her memorial service. John McCain had to call the foreign embassy in Romania. They wouldn't give my friend's body back to the family so they could hold a funeral. They said, oh, we don't care. And John McCain was the one who got on the phone and said, you get her back home so her parents, her mom and dad can grieve, or you're going to deal with me and the United States State Department. And within hours, her body was carefully taken and transported. We all heard that story. We all heard that story at the memorial service. You want to talk about adversity? That was the first time I had ever felt Christ's love, when I walked into that church and a man came over to me, and instead of being rude to me, which was what I was used to in the Catholic Church, this guy walks over to me and says, hey, praise the Lord, you're here, brother. And I don't care if you think it's fake or not. I saw the love of Jesus in his eyes. From that moment on, that root was always there. And 2 years later, I got baptized as an adult, and I consider myself a born-again Christian. I practice Pentecostal, and I make absolutely no apologies about my faith. It's very real. I shout and scream at our Lord and Savior all the time when things don't go my way. I'm a diehard Cubs fan, so I know what loss is all about. But at the same time, I overcame that adversity by just letting God do his thing in my life. And that is my answer to your question.
Nice. So I guess, like, in the beginning of, so I just got a new job, and
Cool.
I was asked 3 times in 2 days, tell me a little bit about yourself. Basically, that's code for why should we hire you?
Why should we hire you?
Yeah. But I want to learn not just why we should hire you, but also just learn more about your life.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, Italians, extroverted Italians. We're not all extroverted. You've seen Goodfellas too many times if you think we all talk the same way. I'm going to talk alongside of him, kind of drawing the conversation. So if I accidentally interrupt you, my apologies ahead of time. Okay. Obviously, I'm a very talkative guy. You just asked me, why should we consider hiring me, and what about me makes me? Or did I misunderstand the question?
So why should we vote for you? But well, let's your life story, basically. Give us kind of
the short version,
a synopsis of your, because I know that you have like 2 bachelor's degrees.
I'll explain. I have 7 college degrees. Most of them are minors. What happened was this: I had a very mediocre adolescent grade school experience. In order, our Mother of Sorrows Catholic School, which was condemned by the Vatican for problems against kids. I had a rough and tumble childhood. Learned martial arts. Got a rank in the Boy Scouts.
So
learned how to camp.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. This is a good time for it.
You said you had a rough and tumble childhood. What made it rough and tumble?
I grew up in a place where human and drug trafficking ruled the land, which when I look around the environment I'm in now, I can see how the pieces came together and what's sort of reigning, what's ruling over this area. Because I watched it when I was a kid. My dad was a narcotics cop. He and my mom were East Coast, New York, New Jersey people. He got offered an opportunity to serve in, of all places, Tucson. He wanted to first go to another place, and they told him that they didn't need him. And he wound up in Tucson, where his team was the basis for the DEA. So I grew up in a place where a lot of drug trafficking happened. If you watch any biography on the country's digestion of going from prohibition to cocaine to heroin to all that stuff, American Gangsta, it was a really bad one that Johnny Depp was in called Blow. Meaning it wasn't historically accurate despite the performances being entertaining. My dad was in the middle of that fight as one of the cops. So I grew up in a place where there were a lot of adults using, trafficking, reselling, and sending their kids to schools to do the same. To the point where my high school, most people wouldn't know this, my high school, Santa Rita High School of Tucson, in 1982 was infiltrated by a drug ring of the middle school parents who would send their kids to the high schools. They lived in an area called Carson Middle School, which has long since been closed. And they would send their kids there to market drugs. Well, the principal got fed up with it and asked the police department to intervene. My dad was on the team that sent in high school-looking cops, had never been done before, to infiltrate the drug scene, which they did. And when news of that story, and they did the bust and they settled down the drug problem and they caught the adults who were a part of it, and when that story was officially settled, the producers out at Old Tucson Studios, who worked for Michael Landon for the CBS Studios contract at NBC for his 2 shows, they're constantly listening to police scanners and reading the reports after the fact. They pitched that later on to a little, it was a network that worked for CBS, and they rejected the series, and then they pitched it again to a new network called Fox, and they bought it, and that was called 21 Jump Street. So that was my dad's team in action. That's where that came from. I grew up in the middle of watching all the dirt happen, meaning there were some people who, nice people do bad things when they're either on drugs or drunk. Alcohol makes nice people do stupid things. And I have a gift in that regard. I'm allergic to alcohol. So I've never been drunk. Closest I've had is injury painkiller sedatives, which I can't stand losing my senses. But one of my last master's programs was in literally substance abuse recovery from Arizona State. I couldn't finish it because the campaign became too much. But in regards to my childhood, when you're a cop's kid, you're a target. You know, they expect a preacher's kid to be nice all the time or utterly rebellious. They expect a cop's kid to be sort of the mini-me cop in the school. And I was never that. I always wanted to be more like the Robin Williams, center of humor, which didn't come until much later. And because I got bullied a lot, I started off what became a 15-year journey learning jiu-jitsu. And many of my sort of not-so-nice friends either died, today they're drug addicts and alcoholics, or they themselves came to know Christ, and they're still alive, and we connect, and they're like, man, I'm really sorry about what I did to you back then, which if you watch the series Cobra Kai, covers exactly that. So I thought it was brilliantly written. So that's where I came from. As far as schooling goes, all my degrees were survival, meaning I was without a college degree. I was married at the time. I was married to an upper division math teacher, and I was complaining about something that had happened. And
when you say upper division, Do you mean college or
I
high
mean,
school?
she would teach college level math for the high school students. That's what they called
Advanced placement.
Right. They called it upper division at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me, she said, I can get you through the math. How close were you to graduating? And I explained to her what happened. Now, Dad had died. So my world was kind of ripped apart by losing my dad at 17. And my support system was gone. Years later, I tried to go back, but there was always something wrong. The community college in Tucson that was there at the time was very, they weren't very good at what they did. Now we have online schools. You can go to anywhere in the world from an online portal. You just need the grades. They were very uncooperative. Needless to say, I found myself here, and what dragged me here was God kept giving me dreams to be here because he was going to do something in the motion picture industry. And I was supposed to somehow play a leadership role in that. And back, I had lived in California. I had lived in Arizona, obviously. I had met the people who helped put together the movie, The Passion of the Christ.
So you grew up in Arizona.
I grew up in Arizona.
And then
in 2000, went to California. I expected to be there for a couple of months. I ended up there 7 years to the day.
Where in California?
Started off in downtown LA, which I don't recommend to anybody. They've renovated it since. The Disney Opera House required it. I've seen the darkest sides of LA. Long Beach. Their subway system allowed me to see everything for free. I could see it, but I couldn't go in and spend money. I always joke to people who are mean people on earth who know Christ and salvation. I'm like, it's like going to heaven without money. It's like going to Disneyland and you can't buy anything.
So you're saying the Passion of Christ, that was a big motion picture, wasn't it?
Gibson's team, oh God, that was a...
So you worked on that?
I met the people, after they were finished with it, my goal was to try to recruit Mel Gibson as a cameo in a script I had called Just in Time. I wanted him to play the Apostle Paul. It was a very funny moment in the script. Well, I ended up meeting the manager of Jimmy Caviezel. And she and Mr. Gibson and Steve McVitie, who is his right-hand producer, she was going to introduce me into that group, but she got sick right about then. And then she did introduce me to her talent trainer, a man named Frank Rossi, who to this day manages my screenwriting. Now, Mr. Rossi, he's now into casting. He just did the movie Marshall with Chadwick Boseman. Let's see, what else? He's done a ton of other stuff. He co-starred in White Man Can't Jump as an actor. And
didn't you say that you worked on that movie? God, He Got Game?
I wrote it. I wrote it. I wrote it.
Wait. You wrote the
I
movie?
wrote that a human has the right to enter this world, and a person who has made the free will choice to exit this world. When I think of euthanasia, my mind goes to the folks that are struggling with terminal illness, where they know, okay, I've accepted Christ as my Savior. I want to go. Or, more so, I want to go. Now, do I believe that we should be assisting depression-based suicides? No, there needs to be criteria. What that criteria is going to be over time is going to rely on more factors than we're going to get into here, unless you want to dive more into them. I understand this is controversial. This does not align with GOP in this state anyway. But then again, the GOP in this state does things that are so far away from its own DNA nationally, they don't have room to brag, which is why I'm going to make fun of my teammates in a few minutes. So as far as, we talked about euthanasia. You're talking about the death penalty?
So we can go on to the next.
So
you're into...
Somebody who has accepted Christ is not afraid to die. They're afraid of losing opportunity. Like, I don't want to lose time with my kids. I don't want to go home too soon. But I also know that if my kids know, hey, Daddy was in a car accident, he loves you, he left this behind. I mean, my dad didn't want to go home when I was 7. He made it crystal clear. I wanted to stay here and see grandkids.
Okay.
Well, that wasn't in the storyline.
We know where you stand. So with crime, your dad was a police officer.
Right.
Drug enforcement. So the Aurora City Council just recently passed an ordinance, $300 for if you shoplift,
right,
worth more than $300, then you get 3 days in jail. And then they just passed the most strict auto theft law ordinance in the country, because Colorado, and especially Aurora, is #1 in the country for auto theft. So I think now it's like you can get up to 10 days in prison, in jail for auto theft. But sure. But that's on your platform, is fighting crime, and this is kind of nationally what the Republicans are really trying to hammer home.
Right.
But the thing is that crime is starting to go down in Aurora now. It's still. I mean,
I can't believe he just said that.
I mean, yeah, just over the past 3 months, it started to go down.
Let's see if his car gets stolen during this interview.
Yeah, my car got stolen, my bike got stolen, and all that.
Oh, poor guy.
But
I had a crappy
Republicans
car that got
continue to
stolen.
hammer home fighting crime,
Okay.
which that's fine with me. Like, yeah, we gotta. My whole thing is let's fight crime, reduce the crime, and then after putting all that money into law enforcement, after we've fought the crime, take that money and put it back into housing, because housing is a big problem here. So give us your pitch on
boy.
fighting crime. What are your policies?
First of all, when you see someone who looks bad, beat them up. I'm kidding. Our biggest issues that I have noticed since I've been here, we have enabled the pro-vagrants, people who have declined any kind of addiction recovery. They want what they want when they want it. It's self-entitled narcissism. I had the misfortune of resident volunteering both with Comitis, whom I loved, and Denver Rescue, which was a den of hell. I hope they shut down Denver Rescue and all the other rescues. We need to multiply the other campuses, though. The biggest problem here is you can't regulate free will, you can't regulate the human heart except with handcuffs and the death penalty, or deporting people. You can deport people from the state, and we've got some folks here. There's a couple that live on corners around here that are, I kid you not, registered sex offenders who haven't exactly checked in lately. I looked them up and I went, why does this guy keep getting, photos and attention on nextdoor.com? Turns out he's a registered guy who likes to go around showing little kids his privates. And I find that appalling. Now, as far as what I'm going to do to enforce it, first thing is I'm going to make it very inconvenient for them to stay here. When you got somebody living in a tent in -2 degrees in snowy weather, they're not here out of survival. They're selling meth. Between the tarped cart, I'm going to make possession of a shopping cart outside of the actual parking lot a felony. I'm going to make it so that if you want to give somebody help out the car window, pull over out of traffic. Fine, pull over out of traffic. But we're not going to make the median a cash register for a junkie, which is exactly what's been happening. So I'm going to make that inconvenient. On the flip side, I think there's a ton of people in jail whose either paperwork is slow or they shouldn't be there in the first place. We don't have enough staff to write them up to get them out. We also don't have enough staff to monitor their quality of life inside. So I want to amplify that formally by adding to the judge's seat more staff for the jails. I want to add 2 strikes to the 3-strike felony law. So enough of this ticky-tack, 3-strike, the guy goes to prison for 1 incident. No, if he made a mistake, let him recover. And if he's got 3 or 4 strikes, he's still not in life prison. We've got too many people that are nonviolent who have gotten hit by some really crappy cracks in the system. I want to relieve that with a venting point. At the same time, we need to be more assertive and forceful than basically encouraging, as you kind of hinted at, the auto theft rate. I don't like Danielle Jurinsky, but her decisions have been...
Why don't you like Danielle?
Oh, she's a thief and a liar. But on our worst day as fellow Republicans, I didn't mean to shout in your face.
Danielle Jurinsky is a council member
Yeah.
in City of Aurora.
The 3-headed monster, her, Steve Sundberg, and Dustin Zvonek. I call him the bag of hair. Steve is a passive-aggressive, and Danielle, there's more than meets the eye there. On our worst day as fellow Republicans, we're still a better option than the Democrats when it comes to the healthiest policy for the state of Colorado. Now, as far as the city goes, I agree with the way they voted. I don't like the fact that she takes my ideas and takes credit for them. Every time she pitches something, I'm like, Danielle, that's my playbook again. I know you were listening that day. And she's got her own personal issues that I think should stay out of the news. I agree with the way they vote. I don't like them as people, which pretty much explains... I brought one of these. This is not to advertise. When we get to it, I want to explain what to expect out of... Go ahead, you can hold it. That's our slate for the county. Mine happens to be circled. The folks on the back are more for the district itself. The others are for county. So you got Steve Monahan on there, who, if he had an opinion about anything, God bless him. Molly Lamar, the person she's up against, wants to do nothing. Molly wants to control it, not change it. I haven't heard a single good idea out of her. But the irony is we have so many people that could do something good there.
So she's running, Molly Lamar is running for State Board of Education.
Right. We need to dispense with the state board altogether, and that's only going to happen from the national level. I wish she had more than just she wants to control. She has no new ideas. And when I told her what I was going to do, presuming she gets in, I'd love to see a vacancy committee and put somebody there who was more than hair on the head. She has no charisma. Then you got me, the world's most self-centered guy on the porch, wearing the lightsaber tie. Well, I had somebody ask me, tell us about yourself. And I said, well, I'm full of myself. Are we done? She laughed. And then, here we go. Carolyn is more qualified to do the job than Joan. The problem is Carolyn doesn't smile. Joan does. Joan's a bubbly girl. Carolyn, unfortunately, is two Green Bay Packer linebackers stuck together and doesn't smile. But she's physically more qualified to do the job than the other lady. I think Joan's going to beat her. Yeah. Marcia should have never been in city council. She's going to make an amazing treasurer. We wasted Marshall in city wasted Marcia. Yeah, Marshall. We wasted Marcia in city council. She should have been doing the treasurer job all along. Granted,
so you think?
I think she should get a court-ordered makeover.
You like her?
Marcia's one of my favorites. I'm a little warm-hearted. Her and her son were the ones who nominated me.
Have you heard Michael Westerberg talk?
I have.
What do you think of him? You think it's going to be close? Sorry, there's a bee here.
Apologies, folks. I'm not trying to get stung on camera.
Over here.
Yeah. Maybe he thinks there's honey in my mouth. Hold on a second. I don't want to swat at it, so to speak. Darn it. Sorry, guys. Y'all still sleeping? Okay, good. I'm going to stand for just a moment until the bee goes away. That's not happening. Hold on. If this isn't entertaining, nothing will. Oh, he's going after the cookies. Who brought those? Whose fault is that? All right. I call the Western bacon cheeseburgers. That's what I call them. Kristen is a temper tantrum every time she doesn't hear what she wants to hear.
Kristen
is his wife, Kristen Mallory Westernberger. And again, I know how to say her last name. I call her Western Bacon Cheeseburger. I wish I had a fly swatter right now. Anyway, I don't agree with how controlling they are. They don't have answers. Marcia knows what she's doing. She's a smart cookie. Bob, he looks like the ultimate RV salesman. He knows more about doing the assessor job than the other guy. I actually trust Bob with numbers.
I have a question about
his grammar's terrible. Go ahead.
Is Marcia? It sounds like Marcia Berzins is just like a really likable person.
She is very like me. She talks with her hands. Very charismatic.
She doesn't rock the boat like Jurinsky.
She doesn't have anything to prove. Danielle walks around with an axe to grind and a chip on her shoulder. Okay. First time I met Danielle, she looked at me. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry because most of the men in Danielle's life were either spineless or they preferred men. I don't know how else to put that. Danielle lives in her own galaxy. I had a chat with Danielle about some things, and we are really divided at the fact that she denies Christ and I love my Savior. And really, that's why she's still single.
Is she a MAGA Trump supporter?
She is a...
Do you know?
To my knowledge, Danielle, I'm going to speak for you for a minute. I know you're going to get pissed off at this, but we're going to do it anyway.
She probably won't.
She's not an extremist, but she does support President Trump. I wouldn't say she is. I think I support President Trump more than she does.
Are you more of an extremist than she is?
I don't blow things up.
Are you more of a Trumpster than...
I wish I was his adopted son, man.
Okay. So you're
there?
You're more Trump than she is.
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if I'm misquoting you.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I actually got labeled a leaning conservative the other day. I was reading some online measurement of candidates, and I thought of myself as a right-wing extremist. I did. I'm like, what is this leaning garbage? Sean Connery came to mind. What is this leaning shit? It made me laugh. I'm like, how am I leaning? I'm hugging the damn thing. Okay. I love Kevin. He's my favorite as far as the candidates go. He's a good, clean cop.
Kevin Edling?
Edling, yeah.
So he's
and he
running
looks
for
just like Michael Keaton.
County Sheriff.
Michael Keaton right here. I love that. Why he doesn't get more votes? His wife is really sweet, too.
This is the Republican Party voter guide?
Right.
So this is what you're dropping off at doors?
This is what I do for the District of 42, meaning we've got another 20-something districts of candidates that are going to be dropping different ones. This is the one that has my face on it, if that makes sense. The last guy here, I kid you not, he looks like he's a young Uncle Fester from the Addams Family. He wants to be the coroner. And he's the perfect guy to deal with dead people. He knows what he's doing. We won't have any problems with the coroner. You're going to be able to rely on the reports. There will be no inconclusive shit. He will tell you why they died. This person died from bad taste in shoes. News at 11. He'll give you the straight up story. That's what I like about Ron.
I think so. The only person that I think has a chance out of all those people is Bob Andrews. Bob Andrews.
Okay.
Because he actually has experience. Whereas the incumbent, PK Kaiser, he's got like a PhD in economics, but he has no actual experience assessing.
I will be
properties.
voting.
He's a realtor, Bob Andrews.
Right.
And he's been working in Arapahoe County.
He got his tail kicked in his last one because he shouldn't have been running in district.
I'm not sure if he has experience actually assessing properties, though.
He does.
Okay.
I've seen his numbers. His grammar sucks. I tease him all the time. Bob, spell check. But I vote for these people, not because I like them as people, but because, in my opinion, the Republican ideology is the best medicine for the state right now. That's where I stand. And again, I don't like most of these people. She nominated me a caucus. Got a soft place in my heart for her. Kevin's really nice to me. The rest of them are kind of eh. We have a love-hate because I think that Carolyn should be doing something higher up, and she's tired of losing on the lower tiers. She got to learn how to smile more. She got a good smile. She just doesn't use it.
Huh.
And then this one's my favorite. Steve doesn't realize he is the 9th guy we asked. Jono Scott was the first to run for CD6.
Steve Monahan.
And the one thing I'll say
I don't
about
know anything
Steve,
about him. He's gonna get crushed.
well, here's the numbers. Shemaine Navarro,
Jason Crow's
who has been, hold on, I'm going to agree with you. You're going to laugh. Shemaine Navarro is his manager. Bitch from hell. Our own district chair called her an attention whore. I can't stand her. However, the $100,000 that she raised for him is going to stand toe-to-toe with a man who can't operate a comb. Jason Crow's hair is terrible, and I do think he's only going to win.
He's a really good dresser, though.
I think he's only going to win.
And he's popular.
Here are the words. I think he's only going to win by 20 points.
Well, the establishment.
You're not hearing me, man.
Yeah, okay,
he's
yeah.
only going to win by 20 points.
The establishment in Washington loves him.
No, the biggest problem has nothing to do with their accomplishments. The biggest problem is that Steve's wife doesn't even want him to run. I was at the county fair, and she's looking at, not me, but us going, Steve, it's time to go. And I'm like, oh, you must have been married to Harry Truman, too. If you know your history, Mrs. Truman was one of the most reluctant first ladies ever. She hated the job. She hated the fact she was married to the president. She didn't want him in politics. That's Steve for you. And again, nice guy. Well, you know what? Every time I hear the word nice guy, my mind goes, did you ever watch SCTV or Saturday Night Live? Rick Moranis and John Candy did a whole routine about 5 nice guys. If you get a chance to YouTube it, it's hilarious. You got to be more than a nice guy in politics. You can be polite, you can be savvy, but at the end of the day, you have to know how to fight, like Rocky Balboa. Getting hit's one thing. You got to be able to get back up and hit them. Steve doesn't do that. His speeches are empty. I'm listening to him going, Steve, there's nobody here, and you're saying things that are not original. What? And he doesn't want to hear it. So
does he have good, interesting policies, though?
No, that's the thing. He's an empty shirt. He has almost no platform, and I hear people asking, so why are you voting for him? Because I do believe that if we get him in to win the seat, we're going to find somebody who is going to do it correctly. Unfortunately, they didn't show up in time. There were 4 or 5 other candidates that might have fit, but for whatever reason, there's a force of darkness in the Greenwood Village area that's been deciding who gets to sit in that seat. That's why Jono didn't take it, and they're very controlling. I nicknamed, this is my own nickname, boy, this is going to make CNN. I nicknamed them the Aryan Sisterhood. They are the people that were kind of sort of behind the guy who went against, was his name Michael Stapleton? Walker, something?
Yeah, he ran for Senate.
He shouldn't have been on the ticket. But they're the ones who keep picking these loser candidates. I'm not saying he's a loser person. This man flies jets for a living. Okay, he's taller than me, granted. That doesn't say much.
Was he in the Air Force?
Yeah, Navy, because when he was describing his because I asked him, what do I call you formally? It was a long thing. The only thing I can think of is when Louis Gossett Jr., he hadn't seen an officer and a gentleman yet, man. He says, well, you are naval aviators.
He's landing aircraft on aircraft carriers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He's doing his job. Don't get me wrong. His wife doesn't want to be there. And I'm like, you got to have family support if you're going to be living in 2 places
He's still
at
in the
once.
military?
That I don't know. I asked him point blank, oh, you're retired now? And he went, no, he said, yeah, I'm doing the campaign full time. That's what he said to me. And then they said, oh, Steve's going out to do another mission. And I went, so you're not completely retired. Those are different. Like Daryl Gibbs, who we almost had in the rotation. He bolted to support Danielle Schwarzenegger. My nicknames. He's still active duty, and he has to go off now and then and do his thing. But Molly, I wish she had a platform other than control. She didn't like the fact that somebody told her kid to admit as a 6-year-old that he was racist. I don't blame her for being offended by that, but at the same time, she doesn't know how to fix the problems, which we'll get into the school system.
Do you like any
next.
Democrats in the state of Colorado?
Do I like them as people?
Do you like any specific Democrats that you think have done a good job, like Jared Polis? Do you think he's done kind of a good job, given that he had to deal with the pandemic?
Let me first answer that question with this statement, if I can. The only difference in some cases between the current Democrats and Republicans is a form. When Kevin Polis switched, I wasn't surprised. I think his timing was all about it being...
Kevin Polis? Who's Kevin Polis?
Kevin... Sorry.
Jared Polis, you mean?
No. Kevin, my apologies. I just said Polis, didn't I?
Yeah.
Kevin, the dude from Adams County. Bald guy, scrawny guy. I can't believe he had kids guy. I don't like him at all. Kevin, help me here.
I'm not sure. Was he U.S. House?
He was the guy who switched from Republican to Democrat.
I don't know.
Informed, aren't we?
So, I don't even know who's running against Jared Polis. Do you?
Hang on. Against Polis?
Heidi, last name?
Heidi Ganal. Her last name sucks. But
she's going to get creamed.
I think, well, here's what I think. And again, I had a dream about this. Kevin Parella. Thank you, Lord. Kevin Parella.
Oh.
I'm not a Parella fan. The timing in which he did it, I thought was cowardly, spineless, perfect fit for the Adams County Democrats. I started off living there, and Brighton, Colorado was a 10-year nightmare for me when I was finishing up the bachelor's degree. I won't get into that too much because, those Democrats fear me, and you should. You know what you did. Kevin, follow-up question after the interview. Kevin is a control freak. Good kids, from what I understand. I don't know why his wife stays with him. I can't imagine that they're still, a couple. Some of them are just for show, and I'm looking at this going, wow, this is where our party is right now. So when he left, I didn't cry. When President Trump officially lost the numeric count, I got to admit, Lord, I'm feeling awful. What should I do? That's when I felt the tug of go file, and I'm like, oh.
You know what race is really interesting to me is the new congressional district 8.
Yes.
Yadira Caraveo and Barbara Kirkmeyer. What do you? It's kind of interesting because
her name is killing me. You got to have a good name. You got to have a good name.
If
you can't spell it, you're not going to get elected. Except Eisenhower, we got away with it.
Caraveo, you mean?
Something like that. I can't even enunciate it.
Yadira Caraveo. So. That's a really interesting district because...
Thank you for letting me show this.
If you look at the fundraising...
Can I show this one real quick?
Yeah.
I put Superman on there because nobody wants a politician. Everybody likes Superman. Cool. All right. You might be getting one of these on your door.
Yadira Caraveo has tripled the fundraising of Barbara Kirkmeyer, but Barbara Kirkmeyer is still favored to win.
Jason Crow.
Why do you think that is?
Do you know why he's got so much more money? Do you know how much he's raised?
Why is it that Barbara Kirkmeyer is favored, even though Yadira Caraveo has tripled the fundraising of Barbara Kirkmeyer?
So why is the Republican candidate favored? Is that the question?
Yeah, Barbara Kirkmeyer. Have you ever met Barbara Kirkmeyer?
I haven't met her in person. If I have,
okay.
I haven't.
I haven't.
We have a really snotty GOP right now. Most of our candidates are unapproachable. The only one I met that I really liked as a person was Heidi. And I think that Heidi's going to go to sleep with a thin lead and wake up with a loss for the same reasons that happened to the Trump election.
You haven't really followed Congressional District 8. Let's get back to Jason Crow. That in Congressional District 6,
I did follow. I just gave a weak answer. I gave a weak answer. That's somebody's calling. We have questions already. I'm gonna take a slug here.
So. Yeah, Congressional District 6. You were saying that why do I think that Jason Crow has raised so much money?
Well, I'm looking at it as he's raised almost $3 million, and our guys raised less than $100,000. So it's either going to be this: either Crow's going to annihilate him, or it's going to be one of the biggest upsets you've seen since the Oakland A's upset the Yankees. You ever seen Moneyball? Moneyball, anyone? Where you have a small amount of money that upsets the bigger one.
That's not gonna happen.
You know, I look at Jeb Bush. He had how many billions that he spent in the primary, and he got his tail kicked. The man is absent of charisma. He was a vacuum of energy. He walked up and just vacuumed the energy out of everybody, and he still had none to give.
Have you looked at the ballot initiatives at all?
Looked at several of them.
What do you think of Proposition 118, which is the affordable housing? So 1/10 of 1% of your federal taxes would go toward affordable housing.
The big question you need to be asking on that is who gets access to it once it's collected? My experience with our local housing issue is this. When I was in the middle of the grad school shuffle, I stayed at Comitas for about 3 months until my student loan matured and I was able to go back finish, and then I wasn't here for a while. That was
You were homeless?
I was homeless for 5 years. Or not, for,
In Aurora.
5 years ago, yeah.
In Aurora?
Yeah.
Where were your kids?
Well, now, I was stuck in a weird spot. I was expecting, there was a pastor of a church who was supposed to offer me a bunk and a job for the summer. And at the last minute, he decided he didn't like XYZ and it didn't happen. So my kids lived with their mom. There was a very ugly divorce, and she's living her life. And she's in Adams County.
Okay.
They're doing very well. All three of them are honor students. I see them as often as I can. They've been here to visit.
What was it like being in the Comitas Center?
Comitas.
You where you can go when you're homeless just during the day.
Comitas.
You can't stay there overnight, though, right?
They did have an overnight. It's a converted army barrack. Comitas needs more money. Comitas was the only staff that ran fluidly. Comitas needs the backing of the National Guard rather than the Aurora PD just had too much going on. And now at 217, you so much as hurt somebody's feelings who's dealing crack, and you can lose your license to practice law. I don't agree with that. As far as the shelters go, Denver Rescue was a pit of hell. It was a dangerous place. I survived there 45 days and left. There was a lot of bad things going on.
Denver Rescue. So you were homeless in Denver too?
I started off in Lawrence Street, and when there was a clash of what I would say ethics, the profiteering off of poverty is so bad that when I saw some things that were flagrantly criminal being done by the administrators there, I left. And they were sorry to see me go. One guy was like, "This is wrong. You were the best we ever had here." So when I got to Comitas, and I only had a little bit of time left before I had to go back to Nevada, I didn't know at the time if I was going to be staying here permanently or if I was going to be going back and forth. And so what they did is they said, "We're going to get you a grant to take care of XYZ." And when we applied for that grant, I had a teaching job already set up because I had multiple teaching licenses. And they said, "We're going to access enough money for you to take care of this problem right here." Well, the grant company that was giving it out wouldn't release the funds because they were being so picky. And I said, "Well, what are they really being picky about?" I said, "Do they think I'm going to destroy the place, or they don't want to release the funds?" And their answer was they didn't want to release the funds to anybody. And I'm like, "Well, isn't that slightly illegal?" They said, "Yeah, our lawyer's on it actually reminding them of that." So what I want to do is loosen up the accessibility to whatever funds are coming in, regardless of the source. The fact is there are people who could use a hand with the security deposits, because the last person who went into whatever apartment destroyed the place. I had a lady brag to me that she was in a wheelchair for diabetes reasons. She bragged she ate too much and she was an alcoholic. So there she was on the street corner with her sign and her husband. I'm like, "Are you guys married like physically or married by law?" She goes, "He has disability, therefore we got hitched. I get a check because he gets a check." And I went, "That's kind of bad." She goes, "Yeah, he had so many disabilities that he would go into an apartment and punch holes in them because he didn't have any self-control, so they would get evicted." This happened every 6 months.
Are you a yes or no on ballot initiative 118 for affordable housing? Yes or no? Or have you not looked into it?
Folks, the fine print is there. I'm going to say yes for the moment and be crucified by my yes.
Yes for affordable housing. I like that. I'm a yes on that too.
Okay.
What about psychedelics, fungi, magic mushrooms?
I actually supported that, not because I agree we should be feeding mushrooms to grade school children.
So you're a yes on ballot initiative number 58.
Developing it for medical science reasons. My dad was on opioids when he was dying of cancer. He had no idea, but he was more comfortable when he was leaving this world. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For end of life, hospice, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I can't stand Kevin Smith's movies. His own acting partner has gone into rehab a few times. I don't agree with the glorification of drugs. I think the Friday movies are not funny. I didn't laugh at Harold and Kumar, even though my instructor did. He said and then those guys went on to make Cobra Kai, so I'll back off of those guys. I don't agree with the glorification of any lifestyle that supports recreational drug use. But when it comes to medical, if a Parkinson's person is going to experience the capacity to use their hands again, and they're behind closed doors, I have a client who lived that.
Have you ever used mushrooms?
No. The closest I ever got to narcotics, I was prescribed Percocet for an injury, and that's the closest. I've been around this shit enough to know it hurts people. I don't need to participate in it.
There's also a bunch of
Go ahead.
ballot initiatives for alcohol. So
You're gonna love my policy on that. I think we should lower the drinking age, and then when you violate a law like Europe, they beat the hell out of you for not showing self-control.
lower it to 18.
I would lower it even more. Again, folks, there's a bigger package going on that I'm able to describe here. I want to make it so that our grade school thing goes through 16, free college at first. If you want to buy more college, you can. Colleges will be more than happy to sell you another program. I mean, you've seen my thing. I'm $160,000 in debt just from student loans. Okay, but I love learning. I'm going to put this stuff to work for the government and
Nice.
for you. Okay,
Nice.
I fell in love with the learning curve of learning curves, if that makes sense. Lowering the age of legal adult so that a 15-year-old could join the National Guard and serve our country without ever firing a weapon. And then they get to stay in school and finish with their so-called end of grade school with at least an associate's degree and a certificate and a profession. They can go out and make a living immediately. So instead of being a mooch living at home with their parents, they're supporting their parents. I want mature 15-year-olds. So I say, if you're going to pay taxes on a job, you should be able to sit at home and drink a beer. And I'm allergic to alcohol, folks. That's what I say. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Again, non-GOP DNA, but it has a greater scope.
Okay, so you're for grocery stores expanding, so allowing
Free market.
grocery stores to have wine,
Republican
whatever.
DNA is free market.
And you're
all that
for
stuff.
alcohol delivery.
Now, I'm having a hard time seeing why alcohol delivery is a problem. So
Okay, so you're yes on that.
I don't even understand
And
why
you're
it's a
yes
debate.
on like small businesses expanding into increasing the cap on number of stores an alcohol business is allowed to have.
Yes, we are past the age of prohibition. Back when prohibition was hottest, the late 18th century, mid 19th century, that fed all the stuff into alcohol is going to take us all to hell. First of all, you don't let a controlling preacher have too much power. I think if the Salem witch trials taught us anything, it's to show a little moderation. Next, probably one of our greatest presidents embraced alcohol in the White House. There's a whole picture of that where Reagan said, we're going to have booze again. Now, granted, some people can't handle it. We have a system in place that can help people moderate and decide for themselves. And if they need to go get help, they can without any shame. Okay? Folks, I have a nervous disorder of
You
sensory
remember
overload.
during the pandemic,
I have Tourette's.
in the heart of the pandemic, everything was closed except for the liquor stores and the dispensaries.
Based on that,
there was a big uproar over it.
based
You're like,
on that,
politically, I got to support all this.
my
right?
answer was not only should they be able to stay open, but if you're going to go to a house of religious worship, again, I'm using a term, we don't believe in religion, we believe in relationship. I'm taunting my fellow Pentecostals a little bit. I have a relationship with Christ. If I want to go to a church and worship, I take responsibility for the consequences of that. If there is, in fact, something that says, well, I have to wear a mask to go into the grocery store, but I don't have to wear a mask to go in. Well, the church is private property. And if I get sick and die, that's on me. I believe in the privacy in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine, a fellow, Rob McCoy of Calvary Chapel, Godspeak in Newbury Park, California. He went to the Supreme Court, or at least the district court in California on this, and he won. So I agreed with his spirit of what he was doing. I was praying that nobody got sick in his congregation. Does that make sense? Because the sword for one affects the other. Like one of my favorite movies is The People versus Larry Flint. Because the sword that allows porn in a controlled environment is the same sword that allows the word of God to be preached in a closed environment. Does that make sense? You can opt into either.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. I think that's why I got leaning instead of extreme.
It's an industry, yeah. It's an industry, yeah.
And I love George W. Bush. Sorry.
Oh, do you though? Okay. Did you like his presidency more than Trump's?
Well, we had 8 years of him. We had an appetizer with Trump. Voted for Donald Trump twice. I do it again. We're going to jokingly talk about why I voted for Obama once.
Why don't we get into that now?
Okay.
Yeah.
George W. Bush was my favorite because he was so honest. Flawed man who gave Dick Cheney too much power. We shouldn't have gone into the Middle East the way we did, or we should have gone in harder, stayed less time, and blown more shit up. I am a proponent of, and please let me finish this thought, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Israel, one of her children is America. America is a child of Israel, quoting Thomas Jefferson. And I don't care who that offends. That's where I put my flag in the sand. I think I said that right.
You're a big Israel guy.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, God, yes. Without them, there is no us. It's not like Palestine had anything to do with the construction of America. Now, everybody should be tolerated. I don't like to use the word tolerate. Tolerated is like unwelcome, but present anyway. I refuse to let America be ruled by the Quran. So I do also, and I don't believe that Jerry Falwell should be making the rules either. So I'm against national prayer because I don't want my kids reciting 19 different prayers from 19 different religions and having to be confused by all that. I do believe we should be bringing more of that content into anthropology classes, sanctioned under social studies, but not condemning the kids to believe that they're racist upon birth. I think that's a disgusting theory. The Shoah Foundation by Steven Spielberg opposes it and solves the problem of CRT. Molly Lamar, if you win, I'm going to shove that up your ass or ask you to resign. Spielberg Shoah Foundation. And George Lucas solved the big tech with Edutopia. Please ask me about my Obama vote.
Go ahead. You voted for Obama
in 2012.
Okay.
I can't fucking stand Mitt Romney. If you practice a religion that condones 90-year-old men screwing around with little kids, I don't want to know you, and you're certainly not going to be my commander-in-chief. For that reason alone. And I went to school with many of those kids. Okay, you're Mormon. You're like, well, that's not me. You're the exception. Don't worry. When your kids get old enough, they're going to get hunted by those pervs. It happens all the time. It hasn't changed. Mitt Romney is an incompetent a-hole with fake hair. And President Trump got sick of his incompetence, and that's one of the reasons why he chose to run. As far as when there was only two choices on the ballot, I don't remember a third between Obama and Romney. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
I think it was Jill Stein. It was an independent, maybe.
I don't remember a third.
She was in the Green. She was in the Green Party. I don't think there was a liberal. Could have been Gary Johnson.
You know what? I think you're right. I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
And if I could go back in time, I might have switched it. But at the time, I thought anybody but Mitt. Anybody but Mitt.
Gary Johnson was an idiot.
Anybody but Mitt at the time for me. I just can't stand Mitt Romney. That's why I voted for President Obama at that time. I don't agree with his philosophies. I'll say this. I would trade to get Michelle Obama to come over to the Republican side. She is one sweet cougar. I would love to see that brilliant woman as a Republican.
What would you give Obama as a grade for his presidency? Given all the stuff that he had to deal with the financial crisis of 2008.
I agree with you.
And then also with having to handle the wars in the Middle East. What'd you think of Libya? Remember? Everyone forgets what happened. We ousted Gaddafi, who was the dictator in Libya.
Well, that was Reagan. That was Reagan.
Well,
and then after Reagan, we had Bush 1 do that. Obama came out, and that was he replaced Bush 2.
But Obama went into Libya and took out Gaddafi. And see, everyone forgets this stuff. It's like
my history sucks today. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Obama bombed more countries than Bush.
I would give him a B-, not a C, not an A. I'd give him a B- because of this. If you're gonna say you believe in something, say you believe in it. And I use this train of thought. His opponent in that race was John McCain. I think John McCain lost not because of Twitter, but because of a stupid statement John McCain made. John McCain said, "I believe a higher power wants me to run for president." John, the Lord Jesus Christ got your ass out of a POW camp and you call him a higher power? You don't deserve to be president if you call your Lord and Savior a higher power. And for that reason, I think we had the guy in office that for a time belonged there. But unfortunately, I think that narcissism...
Well, McCain also said that the fundamentals of the economy were sound, as we were driving off the cliff. So that was
that wasn't the best quote.
It doesn't help when the incumbent of the Republican Party is in
guy,
power when like the
up the
worst
most.
financial crisis since the Great Depression was happening.
Clinton was probably the
But
worst.
Obama
wave we
was a
had.
really good candidate. He really riled everyone up.
I'll say this. When the other team is doing things I don't like, I don't blame them. Like right now, all the issues going on in this area, I don't blame the Democrats for that. You know who I blame? The Republicans needed to show up. My party offends me that they abandoned 42 and let us run unopposed for the last 10 years. We had one guy who was very reluctant. And I'm sorry, he was not an attractive man. He had no personality, no platform, and he still got a third of the vote. And I thought, well, maybe this will work to my advantage. We haven't had a candidate in 6 cycles. That's why Dominic Jackson was there so long. Sick, falling asleep in session. If you're falling asleep in state assembly, you should resign, not get paid for it. You know what Mandy Lindsay's #1 task was? She showed up 1 day a week as an intern. Wake up, Dominic Jackson.
Yeah.
Go get her snacks, which I won't get into that right now. Fat girl. So you got to be healthy as a candidate. I had a doctor clear me just for that reason. Because when you get into office and you're nothing but health problems, who are you serving? And I do have an issue with that. That's why Joe Biden's facing a problem right now, because he is mentally not there. Now, you asked me what grade I would give to Obama. He reminded me of Jimmy Carter too much, if that makes sense. He reminded me too much of Jimmy Carter. Not a single foreign leader was afraid of Barack. And you have to have a little bit of fear of the president, a little bit, if you're going to get things done. I'm watching The West Wing, and I think we had a very Republican-feeling Democrat in Martin Sheen. When he gets on the phone, he means business. And you're like, whoa, I plan to be that guy.
I don't know why you wouldn't fear Obama when he bombed more countries than Bush, but okay. It's funny that they say that the foreign leaders fear Trump more, even though he definitely bombed less countries than Obama. We don't really know a lot about what happened.
I think when you appear in professional wrestling
in our
it makes a
military
difference.
during Trump, because a lot of what Trump did was covert.
Mm-hmm.
But he did wipe out ISIS, so
Yes, which only existed because we had shitty intel. We had access to grind from the second Bush administration. We went in awkward. We got out terrible. That was just fumbled. And again, I don't think that W did it wrong. I think he trusted Dick Cheney too much. He gave him too much control. Because you know my favorite part of the Bush administration? Number 2, I didn't like Bush 1. Bush 1 was a dick. The second guy, he turned the Texas Rangers around and he put Nolan Ryan in charge. They've been winning ever since. I think that's brilliant. And if you're really going to touch the soul of America, you do it through baseball and other sports. I'm a big sports guy. That's one of the things I'm going to bring here, is I'm going to bring an ongoing committee, or a committee to bid every month on the Olympics, Major League Baseball, rookie training, tryouts. We're going to bring movie DNA here.
Are you for putting a stadium in? Because I know that the Budget Advisory Committee has been talking about building a stadium in Aurora at Alameda in 225. Is that something? Are you willing to have the taxpayers pay for it?
Oh, you said taxpayer money?
Private-public partnership?
Yeah.
The bulldoze Bicentennial Park?
You know what? We need to have outside revenue come in and pump up our muscles a little bit. I love the idea. I'm not ready to hit you with taxes yet. Let's do that after you fall in love with me during the first term. No fucking taxes. The stuff I'm going to do, folks, the money's already there. The tourism Department of Tourism, through the Economic Development, has already approved the money. It keeps flip-flopping back and forth, like if you look at a bottle of water, because they haven't officially appropriated it to the place where they said they were going to put it. So we've got that money I'm going to use for my pet projects as far as stimulating the economy. It's already there. Raising the money on taxes.
Are you for keeping Tabor in place, taxpayer Bill of Rights?
I'm failing to see how it's helping us. I'd rather lower people's overall tax burden. I want to do away with Colorado state tax. I've lived in states where we don't have.
Keep the budget balance.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have so much money and resource that just needs to be allocated by people who don't have learning disabilities. Sorry, most of the Dem leadership I'm looking at, I'm reading their bills, it's all accounting flaws. And I'm like, guys, I got a C in accounting and I can do better than this. Okay, I got a B minus.
Okay. So, yeah, your opponent is Mandy Lindsay.
Yeah.
You can go to her website, just Google her and check out what bills she's passed. But
I'll give you $1 for every typo you find.
she apparently, she filled in. So Dominique Jackson resigned for House District 42.
Oh, you want to hear that story
joined
next?
HUD, and then Mandy Lindsay got elected in the special election to fill that seat.
Special election.
And so he's up against Mandy Lindsay. You're saying that she hasn't really passed much? But I went to her website. It looked like she listed all these bills that she had passed. I don't know if she had actually sponsored them or if it was just bills that she had voted on that had passed.
Yeah, I would compare her
But I
resume
recommend
to
that you just go to her website and
Joe
look at the
Biden's.
bills that she's passed, whether or not you like them or not. It may not have been bills that she's passed, but she just voted on and they passed. I don't know if they were all sponsored by her, crafted by her. But you were saying that she hasn't really passed. What is it you...
Man.
She's your opponent, man. So this is your chance to.
I'm ready to talk
buck
about
wild
this.
about Mandy Lindsay.
First of all, Mandy, you were asked politely. I came to you very nice. I came to you friendly. I came to you as nice as a human being could. You know, I'm nicer than a Walmart greeter. Okay, Mandy stonewalled me and said basically, I'm beneath her. No, and I've yet to meet a person in our district who approves of you. Some of them don't even know you exist. So maybe that's a plus for you. Your face is not on the picture because yes, you got health issues. Mandy is 600 and something. No, she's 350 pounds. This is a woman who loves food, and I saw her in her interview, which you recorded, and when she was, oh my God, totally down for controlling things as opposed to solving problems. Let's talk about that. First, let's go back to Dominique Jackson. Let's talk about how Mandy got there. Mandy wasn't holding a job outside of fast food. Went in, she volunteered at the Capitol. We could use volunteers. Every district could use. There's unfilled positions everywhere.
Well, she was an aide to Dominique Jackson. She was holding the seat.
She was appointed as an aide. Yeah. That again, that was a volunteer position.
But it was very temporary. It was for I think a few months.
Yep.
Couple
very
months.
Temporary. Now the reason I go there is her primary thing was to keep her awake. Dominique should have never been there for 6 years. I looked at her record. Little to nothing. She was mainly an environmental something or other law passer. I can't tell the difference in the sky between the time she started and finished. So what did she do? She paid herself. And what did she do before that? She was not renewed by a New Mexico TV station. Fibbed on some of her credentials. I messaged her early on because she had on her Facebook page endorsement by Biden-Harris. That's huge if you're in the lower offices. That's huge to get a presidential endorsement. And again, I say the words.
I didn't know. But
yeah. Oh, I've got a copy of it. I'll send it to you. And I remember like, who resigns? What happened was they visited me. I said hello to her, and then they visited my. Back then, I had two different LinkedIn. One they took down because apparently I was bullying people by saying I had the GOP nomination. True story. And the other was on my Facebook pages. I was able to see who was looking. It was a U.S. congressman and the PR firm for Rhonda Fields. They took one look at me and went, "Oh my God!" A big smile. A man who's graduated from college. He's got kids. He's not anything we can pick apart. He's actually qualified. Dominique, you're going to have to spend money and energy. I watched a video in which she was describing she was dealing with cancer and she had a husband at home, at least I think he was, who was more terminally ill than she was. She couldn't fight that on $41,000 a year. She had no energy left. She resigned. After she resigned, I see the headlines. Oh, she's been offered, and I'm going to use the word golden parachute, may not be accurate, but I think what she said was, well, I don't want to be homeless again. And they said, well, why don't you go deal with our key person? We need somebody in Utah. That job was created for her as a parachute for, she didn't want to face me in the election. So when she resigns, she takes the better job. That allows a few months, and I asked Rod, I forget his last name.
But that's normal. That's just strategy, right?
I'll
for
say
her
it's,
not to face you.
I'll
Why
say
should
it's strategy.
she? If she's everyone here is like practically a Democrat. She's the incumbent Democrat. Why should she debate you?
Now, I agree with. I agree with your answer.
I off the board. I mean, it happens on both Republicans and Democrats do that all the time.
And I asked the guy
nothing abnormal.
who's been in office.
I mean, that's one of the problems.
I'm
trying to get. I would love to have a debate between you and Mandy. I'll be the moderator. I don't have a dog in this fight, so.
I love him. I agree with what he's saying. But
she's not going to agree to it because she's the overwhelming favorite because she's the Democrat.
We haven't had enough manpower here to wage a case. Our leadership screwed up by not having somebody here to fight this battle for years. So if that's anybody's fault, it's ours. what I have to do is just walk into. I always joke that the Cubs have a long losing streak.
Why do you think everyone
You
likes
put on the uniform.
Why do you think
it's me.
everyone in the district likes the Democrats?
They didn't have a choice. There was nobody else on the ballot. They didn't like the Democrats. They didn't have anybody else to vote for.
Well, the Republican.
There was none. There was one guy who didn't canvass. I believe he sold security systems, which in Aurora shouldn't be that hard. And he got his butt kicked every time. He had the charisma of my shoe. That's why me saying he had no charisma. And if you looked at him, he looked like somebody parked a bus on his face. This is not an attractive man. When you get into politics, and I constantly tell my own team, get a makeover. Because this is how we get judged by the public. It's just the honest truth. Now, let's talk about the fact that she did resign. She got offered that other position. Dominique Jackson got offered that.
Department of Housing and Urban Development,
Right.
which is actually a cabinet position.
I went to her very
or
friendly.
a cabinet spot in the
appointment.
presidential executive branch,
Right.
U.S.
Right.
executive branch.
So let's talk about vacancy committees
Biden
just for a
administration.
second. Vacancy committees, unless you can prove this wrong, are a club that exists within the party. Any objection to that statement? Okay, I'll move forward in my thought. She won 28 to 26 by the club's vote. Those people were not elected. Therefore, she was not elected. It was an internal club vote.
So it's the precinct organizers who voted to fill the position. And actually, I am a precinct organizer, so I did vote. And
But you were just a volunteer. No, I'm not.
I was
downplaying that.
actually to become a precinct organizer, you have to be elected by the party. But in that final vote, there was probably 50 people for the final vote.
It was 28 to 26.
Yeah.
And I noticed how Gail Pugh didn't go away quietly. She's still on Tracer as active.
Well, I really liked Kyle Leggett. Was great.
He was the dark horse.
Yeah.
And the only reason
Kyle
he
Leggett,
wasn't
the
allowed,
doctor,
the only reason he wasn't allowed is they outdistricted him because it cuts off at Colfax and his job was 100 yards north. He should have been in this thing. I said that right away. I'm like, if anybody's your dark
he just
horse.
dropped out because he's a doctor and he's super busy.
Scheduling? Okay.
And obviously he makes really good money and shit like that. But
Housing shortage. You want to talk about that briefly, or
no,
you want to
no.
come back to this?
There was something else I wanted to. Anyway, yeah, but Mandy,
You were proving that we did.
She finished.
We voted you in.
We did.
The Democrats voted their own
What's
team
that
in.
voting called? Ranked choice. We did ranked choice
Okay.
voting.
Yeah, I saw that.
And she finished in first place in both rounds. So, I mean, she was like, yeah, I mean, only 50 people voted, but she still won. But it was only 50 people out of how many people live in House District 42? 80,000 people. So that's not like an election. I mean, obviously we need reform, right? There should have been
just under
the
100,000.
people should have voted. It shouldn't be the party deciding who fills
He
that
agrees.
seat.
I like the fact that he agrees. I'm not debating what happened. I like the fact that you agree. It needs to be reformed. But what I will say is that, okay, she won the 28 to 26 vote. That's a close vote at that small range. Meaning, and that size, that capacity, that sample size is so small.
Well, that was in the first
Right.
vote in the ranked choice.
There should- you guys shouldn't
but
have had a
in the last
primary.
round, she won by more. Yeah.
Now, the fact that you guys spent $30,000 to get through the primary blows my mind.
Well, I mean, that's why because if we were to have a special election where the people vote, that takes money. That would be funded probably by the taxpayer. That's one of the reasons we don't do it, is because it doesn't cost us anything if we stick within the party.
So next, she gets into office. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
She gets into office a week late on purpose. This is so she can have an extra term, because technically she wasn't there full term. Everybody does her homework for her. Need me to say that again? This is a woman who's academically challenged. I think she's got a learning disability.
No. Mandy Lindsay is a very, very intelligent.
She's street smart, but she hasn't
was
finished
the
anything.
chair of House District 42, and she's really intelligent, but
Are we debating?
She at the meetings, she would just take over the meetings, and the meetings weren't run well. It wasn't like, it was like her basically just taking over the meetings.
I'm gonna let you talk.
But anyway, I want to talk to Mandy, but anyway, what do you have to say?
He mentioned self-centered. Keep going with that.
I'm not saying that I disagree with Mandy or whatever. I don't have a dog. I don't have a dog in this fight, but
I don't know about that.
All I'm saying is that, yeah, Mandy is smart. And I like her policies.
She's street smart.
I think you're smart too, and I think you're good for the Republican Party. It basically comes down to, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
Here's my issue with her. Even if she wanted to change things and make improvements, she doesn't know how. That's my biggest deal with her. She's a horrible
How are you going to make changes then?
Oh boy, I'm going to do some amazing things. So before we get to those individually, which we covered a lot of them already, folks, if your vote is going to hinge on this, let me put this thought in your mind. On behalf of the Republican Party, I apologize for our absence and, frankly, the GOP's ignorance and arrogance in some areas. I'm sorry. Now that I'm here, I will never let that happen here again. If you do not want change, if you want to keep things as they are, cost of living increasing, inflation increasing, safety down, school system continuing to dilapidate because Bill and Debbie Holan don't know how to run a school past 1975, if you want to keep things going so the average drug dealer is having a great time and everyone else is suffering, don't vote for me. Mandy Lindsay's your girl. She's your female, she's your lady, she's your whatever the heck it is that politically correct satisfies you. People who accuse others of misogyny, I'm sorry, Kristen Pollard, Western Bacon, or Mallory, where did I get Pollard from? Yeah, wrong human. Western Bacon Cheeseburger. Just because a guy is strong and outgoing doesn't make us haters. In fact, I give good massage. You want to talk about misogyny? That's a joke. Folks, if you're looking for change, you got the one-stop shop
talking
here.
About policy then.
Okay, let's go back to policy.
Where do you stand on healthcare? Public option?
Healthcare.
Medicare for all?
Well, most people don't realize the reason why your healthcare is so out of control. And is it okay that I'm treating them like they're sitting here?
Yeah.
Okay, eye contact wise. The reason why your healthcare, and because I asked a couple providers point blank, and
do you want it to be more private than what it is now?
Definitely more competitive. Free market creates opportunities, guys.
What do you think of Obamacare?
He tried, but they underdeveloped certain areas, which let me get to this. Malpractice insurance is preventing medical providers, doctors.
You're talking about tort reform?
Whatever is making that malpractice stuff high, you got to bring that down. Otherwise, they can't function. It's not that they don't want to give out free this and free that and low this and low cost that. They can't afford to. And my heart goes out to them. Did you ever see the Dallas Buyers Club? Gorgeous movie. Matthew McConaughey plays a fella who was about as heterosexual as you can get, rode bulls for a living, professional rodeo. Gets AIDS. This happened apparently based on a true story sometime in the early 80s. Comes back to his home after he's been diagnosed from being on the tour and living the lifestyle he was living. Gets diagnosed and is told by a doctor, the medicines to help you live a longer life exist, but no, they're not legal in the United States. So he takes it upon himself to go into the countries, plural, and Jennifer Gardner plays the doctor who tries to counsel him the whole time. Gorgeous story. And he goes and he gets those meds and he proves that they work. So instead of selling the meds, he sells a membership to a club in which you come to literally his hotel room and you buy whatever. And people came out of the woodwork and they were members. At the end of the story, the FDA tries to come after him like he's a criminal, providing this horrible against the law service. And you know what the judge says? The judge looks at the FDA rep and says, I am appalled at how much you guys, the distance you have gone to make this man like a criminal. He has the right to pursue his life. He has the right to pursue his happiness and his quality of life. And he ends up winning, and they end up taking those meds, and now today I believe many of them are on the open market. I think that the same way.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I agreed with that.
Privatized.
Yeah. Now, we need to give the medical community that wants to cooperate and not be all about money, 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 and most of them are very nice people, the opportunity to be able to provide a reasonably priced service and bring those med costs down, etc. Now, as far as immediate health care, we're stuck with Medicaid from the LBJ era. It's the only thing we have at the moment, and it needs to remain as a safety net. We're running on a spare tire.
Do you think Medicaid is okay where we're at now? Or
Fuck no! We have so many improvements.
So would you cut Medicaid?
That's one area that if I had to, I would not enjoy cutting. You can't treat any part of the budget like it's sacred. At the same time, cut it last. Our Social Security is going to be a different scenario in the future because the biggest generation that the world has seen in 100 years is dying. There's going to be fewer bodies to cover. I don't mean that to sound cruel. We got more people going home to Jesus than coming into him, if that makes sense.
What's the deal with the high costs of medications?
Greed.
So are you for
Greed.
subsidizing the cost of
Now, subsidizing is a funny animal.
price fixing?
I don't like price fixing because when you price fix, you take all of your stronger allies out of the equation. So subsidizing might be our best option, depending on the marketplace. I really want to give free market as much chance to breathe.
If you price fix, that stunts innovation? Because
Yes, price fixing hurts us more than it helps us. Now, as I say that, folks, I've been on meds. I have Tourette's. I've had sedatives in my life. Granted, a speech therapist helped me more than the medication did. And then over time, my body was able to acclimate. But I don't want to have to tell somebody who is suffering any number of forms of cancer or motor skills limiting degenerative issues, I don't want to have to tell them, I'm sorry, this is too expensive for you. You've only got a year to live, or you've only got 6 months when they could have 15 years of quality living. Does that make sense? Magic Johnson shouldn't be the only guy in the world who can afford to live with AIDS. And let me tell you something. The population with AIDS that is heterosexual is higher than anybody else. I got corrected on that once. Knowledge is power, folks. Throw one at me.
Okay.
I told him to challenge me.
Yeah. Cryptocurrencies. Well, this has to do with also inflation.
Sure.
I used to be a staunch, I still am a Democrat, but I think more independently now because of the spending that I've seen go on by both parties, really. But I always thought, oh, let's go Medicare for all. Let's go, spend all this money on public housing. But then post-pandemic, it's like we spent $8 trillion in like, whatever, 3 years or something. And so the inflation is killing us now.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have a limitless spigot. You just open and close whenever you want. So that's where my views have changed a little bit, have become more Austrian economic school of thought. But both parties spend like crazy. But what was I going to say? The thing that could possibly save us, I think, is cryptocurrency. What do you think about cryptocurrencies?
I'm going to admit I am ignorant when it comes to cryptocurrency. I don't go there. So I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm going to say that when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, everything else was on the table. If we want to invent our own money, I want to speak wealth over you and me. I want to speak wealth over these kids. I want to do things like free education to a certain point, and then when people get hungry about what they really want to do and so on, they can pay more for the more novelty stuff. Now, as far as how it functions, if it is improving our situation, our Constitution was never meant to be written in stone. This is the way it is forever. So if we can take some tool and improve our lives for 5 years, and then say, okay, it worked for them, but it's no longer working. Okay, then do it that way. Go about 5 years at a time and see what it does. So I'm all for exploration, but pay attention to how much water the Titanic has really taken on, and do we have enough of a water pump to keep us from going under, if we can get the metaphor. So I don't know enough about cryptocurrency to make a fully educated statement on it. I'm speaking in the abstract of what I'll call creative economics, which I have paid attention to because my master's degree is in entrepreneurship. And we looked at things like, don't open a retail store unless you can afford 5. Anything less than that, you'll go bankrupt in 2 years. So I've looked at the numbers on those things. So bear in mind, I don't know enough to comment other than in the abstract. Is that a fair answer? Okay. When I think of Bitcoin, I think of the cartoon character walking around absorbing it in the video games. That's as far, mentally, I'm sorry, that's as far as I go at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
Donkey Kong, really?
So I have some other ideas that are broader, that don't have to do with state, like your position, but it will give us an idea.
Let's do it.
As to where you stand ideologically.
When this is gone, I'm done.
Are you for the wall, building the wall? On the border wall that Trump started building, didn't finish it?
Yes, and
then Steve Bannon pretended like he was doing it privately. But then
that pissed me off. Steve, if you're going to do shit, do it all the way. Oh my God! And I liked him for a while.
He was pocketing the money.
I know. I saw that. I was like, and he's smart enough not to. This man did not have to break the law to make money. Personally, I think he had something mentally snapped. Like John.
Did you listen to his podcast?
John Nash in A Beautiful Mind. I haven't. But when I saw what happened, I'm like, this just doesn't fit a man that doesn't need a therapist right now. I think he ran out of gas. He was running on his own fumes. I mean, I started going to Joan L. Scott's church because I knew unless I was around people praying, I was going to run out of gas. This is an exhausting process.
I ran out of gas. I got burned out.
You're gonna be able to drive home. So to answer, he just asked a question about
the wall.
The wall. I have friends that work on that team in Southern Arizona. So my experience, my answer is going to be a lot relying on that, a lot relying on what my dad experienced in the late 70s and 80s when we had identical problems with no wall whatsoever. First of all, northern Mexico is in need of a makeover. Southern Mexico is absolutely gorgeous. If you want to see a city run well, it's in southern Mexico. Second richest country or third richest country, something like that in the world. Mexico is not a poorhouse. Nogales sucks, but Mexico is rich. As far as the border goes, the people coming over are primarily from Central America, south of Mexico. Now, my attitude is we need to increase staff, so increase funding for the staff to patrol it. Based on this, not based on, oh, gee, you're here, let's shoot you, which some countries do, by the way. We haven't gone there in a while. We just keep sort of throwing them back. So here's what I have to say about immigration. This is what we're going to have to talk about. The reason why the wall is there. Immigration. If you want to come over to my country, I live here, I was born here. I'm not going to invade your country. If you want to come over and work, tell me which state you want to pay taxes in. I'll give you a chart. Pick one. Pay your taxes according to being a citizen in that state. If you want to say Nevada, where they don't have state income tax, but they have to pay federal, fine.
If you're undocumented, but you're paying taxes?
We create the documentation at the speed of thought. We have the technology, we haven't done it yet. So first you need it to be policy. So have them declare what state they want to pay taxes in, and if for whatever reason they haven't paid the taxes, smile big and say...
If they're undocumented and not paying taxes, but they're working and they're not criminals?
Undocumented, goodbye. Okay. But if they're here legally, if they just say, I want to pay taxes in, give me Illinois, or give me... I'm speaking any state.
Okay.
Now the cool part is, when you're paying taxes there, you get the benefit as if you were there.
So it sounds like you're against the wall.
Virtual virtual citizenship. I'm for that because that also leans into my my school policy, the money following the student school policy. Because some kids are going to go to school but never leave home except to go to say cheerleading practice or football team. The way I'm going to do it. And as far
as
the
refugees, like you know how the city of Aurora just got a bunch of Afghans, and I think we're getting probably some Ukrainians as well.
We as a nation keep our doors spiritually open to refugees. That is a decision that has to be made on a local level, and are we going to benefit from the money that's being sent by national to have them be somewhere? Now, my attitude is, if these people are going to come here and be law-abiding citizens, which, frankly, most of the immigrants into 42 are from other countries. Stupid statement I just made. What I meant to say, most of the black population, the non-Caucasian population, are from other countries, and most of the black population from other countries are not from Africa. They're from 5 other countries that have nothing to do with Africa. As I say those words, are the doctors, lawyers, and engineers who come over here seeking the American dream. And I think they should be able to work for them. So that's my attitude on immigration. Now, there are going to be some people who don't want to play by those rules because that's just the way people are. Oh, I don't feel like doing that. That's why the wall's still necessary. You have to have some kind of a something that says, hey, if you're not willing to abide by that set of criteria, no, come back when you're ready to do it.
What do you think of globalization? Obviously, many jobs have been shipped overseas, and I mean,
this is where
everyone knows.
This is where they did a hilarious
pros and cons of globalization.
They did a hilarious movie on.
But should we bring the supply chain back to America?
We need to be American first. If we care about the American economy first, we need to keep America's economy first. I know that sounds redundant.
Does that mean bringing the supply chain back?
It means bringing the supply chain back. It means telling India, we love you, but fuck you, we come first. It means telling China, I really love everything you're doing, but we got to come first. And I don't care how many times a French spineless jerk tells Joe Biden, "Oh, welcome back to the world." Fuck you, not you, not him. I'm not saying it's if you want American economy to be put first, then you have to do that. Now, the internet has
you're
changed
willing
the
to pay
equation.
more for your goods if it means we have more jobs in America, because that's what would happen.
Personally, yes.
Okay.
Now, I would. Now,
Yeah.
when you say more, that's not saying peanut butter made in America, $9, peanut butter made in Mexico, 11 cents. That's not what we're talking about. And quite frankly, the grocery chains have been smart enough to outmaneuver us. I can't tell you how many times I go to a store and I actually try to buy something that I know wasn't made here, and either I can't find it or it's way too expensive. I have to climb on Amazon to go get it. So it's not like they're not aware of it. We've got some very smart people in the private industry trying to balance that out. I want to give them every opportunity to flourish our economy, so that when people do come to America to experience America, they're coming for more than using the restroom at Walmart. We have to be better than this. Please continue. Hope my energy isn't thrown off coffee.
What made you want to run? I mean, what was it that... So, you know, Colorado I think is a pretty well-run state, even though, yeah, it's Democratic. It's leaning more Democratic, which is, I kind of like that because I am a Democrat, but it does lean more in. There are more independents than Republicans and Democrats, but what I'm saying is, aside from what you're running on, which is, tough on crime, pro-life, what was it? It's like battle inflation or whatever.
I want to bring the movie DNA here.
Are there any specific things that are happening in Colorado that are just like really, like, we need to change that, aside from your main platform?
You cannot live and die based on one or two industries, and right now, unfortunately, we're living and dying on the energy industry, which needs to be renovated, and we're living and dying in Denver Broncos. When I saw Condoleezza Rice join the ownership, I love you! That is conservative, Bush. If you want to be a part of a winning team, sit next to her. These are people who resurrected other economies, including the nation's. When I think of Colorado, I think of a place that is ripe for positive change. And if this man loves his country, but if the Democrats in charge could have made these changes, they would have done it already. So in my opinion, you have to be able to call on more resources than that. That's why I say destination-based events. I'm going to bring the movie industry here by way of pro movie making licensing. That's going to have a huge impact nobody sees coming. Remember when the seatbelt laws went into effect and we all had to go out and get car insurance? You're probably too young to remember that, but when it happened, it was a very quiet change that everybody was like, oh my God, I have to have this? This is real? Yes, that's what the impact is going to be when I do the movie DNA thing. And then when I make it so you have to have a license to get paid. And then you're going to have grants going out to the creatives. You're going to have asset loans like the SBA does, but done locally. And then when some person goes out and makes a successful something, that revenue comes right back here and bolsters our economy. San Francisco flourishes for two reasons: The Godfather and Star Wars. I want to bring that energy here.
You're for cutting corporate taxes?
I'm for changing those structures so that the corporations can share their profit with their employees. And I'm sick of hearing about the 1%. I'm sick of hearing about it. It's not that I don't agree with it. I'm fucking sick of hearing it. Like the whole me and the artificial womb thing. Pro-lifers, a financial war I hate, because I wrote a novel that solved the problem and they refused to listen. Pro-choice, it's a choice. It's free will. It doesn't mean automatic death. 50% of that could be life. I'm sick of the debate. And because I'm sick of the arguing, I said, well, if we solve the problem, it's like joining phone booths in history. We no longer have to deal with an obsolete issue, if that makes sense. So,
do you think we have enough competition? Like, basically, what, 5 companies? Amazon, Apple, Microsoft.
We will have more. There
Google,
will always be more.
All those companies are getting into so many different industries.
And if you travel back in time enough, all those companies had a different face. And in the future, you're going to have somebody we haven't heard of yet that will be the big deal. Their policy will force us all to adapt yet again.
Do you think universal basic income is coming because of automation and because of globalization?
Now, the Bible tells us it'll get here. In my opinion, there's too much love in the world, and we still got another 1,000 years until Jesus comes down on clouds and does some surfing. We still got time. So to answer your question, I think we're on the tip of it. I don't think we've really entertained the biggest waves of it. I think we overtalk. Do I not overtalk? I think we brag about things we don't have yet, like Enron did. Enron was bragging about having this 25 years before it existed. That's one of the reasons why they went under. Technically, they just talked too loud about what could be. And they did some methods of accounting that were flat out illegal. So, are we heading there? Of course we're heading there, because we've got a lot of brilliant people. Our best poetry has not yet been written. Every single success story started off as 10 failures in a row. Let's look at Lincoln's career. Now, what you asked me, what prompted me to run? Are we ready for that answer?
Yeah.
I thought I would be a lot more famous, like Ronald Reagan was in some movies before he went from his contract ended to his agent said, go be the president of the Screen Actors Guild. And then he ran for governor and he won. And it turns out he won because he was handsome and the other guy wasn't. That's how he became governor of California back then. Well, he got his tail kicked in like 5 or 6 presidential elections in a row. He was like the 8th guy. How do you feel when you're the 5th guy losing to Nixon? Think about that for a second, okay? So history tells us an interesting story. It wasn't until things got so bad that he was this life of the party fun guy at celebrity roasts. And Jimmy Carter gets in and we're thinking, okay, we went from the stench of Watergate to Carter, and then things go really bad. Well, then Reagan stands up and he says, it's morning again in America. So that's what I'm saying to you. It's morning again in America. And as far as why did I run? First, when I was in mid-sentence with my last page of my screenplay for Will Smith, I remember watching the election, and then when he got slapped, when he did the slapping on the stage, I'm like, oh, I am so screwed. Well, I remember praying, Lord, what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to relax, go watch The West Wing for a little while. And I was crying a little bit. I was very stressed out. I'm like, Lord, I want to go back to the classroom, but everything was closed. All the schools were closed. I couldn't do anything more than maybe teach online. I had one sort of virtual class. I was feeling discouraged. And I'm sitting there watching, and he goes, okay, now watch this episode. And I kid you not, it was a really cool episode where Martin Sheen is ready to give the State of the Union address. And he walks up to the doorway of the main assembly, and he says to the doorman, would you please tell the speaker that I'd like to see him, please? And he briefly prays, and he thanks God that he's there. And the guy says, yes, Mr. President, one moment. And the door opens, and you hear, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States. And I swear to God, I heard his voice, that's going to be you. And I'm like, I get to open the door? He goes, no, you're going to run and you're going to win. Whoa. And I hear the music blaring, and I'm like, I had goosebumps. I'm like, okay, Lord, where do you want me? Now, before, this is 10, 15 years ago, I thought I was supposed to run locally and sort of help the schools that way. And I remember my kid's mom looking at me saying, if you run for office, I'm leaving you. She didn't want any part of fame. She had her own issues. I won't get into that right now. She got very violent when she didn't get her way, so we parted ways in court. But I had multiple years of therapy, and finally they said, what do you think is costing you your health? Because the stress was apparently killing me. A doctor said, there's something eating you. I said, well, I've done all this work in the movies. I've never really gotten paid, and I don't have as much credit as I thought I would have. And he said, you know, there's something else there. And everyone kept telling me, we see you speaking to mass crowds. I thought I was going to go off and be a successful stand-up comedian. I spent 2 years learning that under a guy who wrote in Vegas for Burt Reynolds when he won his Emmy.
Tough to make it in that industry.
When Craig Nelson won for Coach. My instructor wrote those screenplays. For those of you who remember Northern Exposure, John Corbett on the show doing the radio announcer, that was my instructor's script. I got him the Emmy. Okay, so I learned from these people. My theater professor, when I got a minor on my master's in business, I got a minor in theater from all those classes. And he worked with Mr. Spielberg on Schindler's List. He was also the casting guy in Batman for 10 years. So I had some amazing people preparing me. I thought I was going to go be like the supporting character in a family show, like if you watch Family Ties or Full House or something. That's where I thought my life was going to take me, or maybe I would find my way on the Muppets. When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was write for Saturday Night Live. Today, you couldn't put a gun to my head to get me to write for Lorne Michaels. I don't agree with how he's been mean to people. So, trained to do that, when I got into my first speech for the party, I looked at my campaign manager, and she had tears coming out of her eyes. She goes, oh my God, you are a natural at this. It's like watching JFK be born. And I'm like, wow. And then someone else it was a troll on my website. He goes, you're like if Teddy Roosevelt, JFK, and Reagan had a love child. And I just fell out of my chair laughing. Well, I realized this is what I'm supposed to be doing. All of this training, all of this. When you write for movies, when you write for television, when you prepare for performance, it's fiction. But when you do the same exact process and it's enforced by the courts, that's legislation. And instead of just writing what if in a novel, I get to write what if in real life. That's why I'm here. Because the Lord Jesus Christ told me I'm going to be President of the United States by 2028, and if not by 32. Well, you know what? We're all going to find that out. But it started here, because I even prayed, Lord, what do you want me to do? I was originally supposed to file for something more national, and I kept screwing up the filing process. So when I found out, oh, we'll do local, I had an advisor speak into my ear and say, keep it as small as you can, because this is going to be the toughest race you ever run. You have to get noticed as a politician first. She was right in that regard. Another dude looked at me and went, you can't win against Dominique Jackson. 2 weeks later, she resigned. So I'm like, apparently the Lord is moving some things around. And when I met these people, I realized I was more qualified than the majority of them. But why was I supposed to be doing that? And the answer was, I didn't come here for their approval. If I had the approval of all these people, I still wouldn't get elected. I've come here to lead people. I remember the line, for those of you...
Is your resume on LinkedIn?
It used to be. I need to restore it.
Why'd you take it off?
I didn't.
Can you put your resume back on LinkedIn?
I happily. The best one I have right now is on Facebook. If you're willing to go there and look at it, it's really fleshed out. I usually had it on. I had a very elaborate one. I just put all my degree work back on there, but I had some elaborate stuff on there. Somebody got mad that I was claiming to be the GOP champion of 42 and said, "Oh, this is bullying," and they kicked me off the first time. I just went back on last month.
Yeah, Cory, put your resume on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I'm this
Cory
close to putting
Parella.
my transcripts on there too. I had somebody like, you don't have this? I'm like, yeah, I do. I promise it's there. I got the scars to prove it too.
Do you believe in climate change?
I
Do
believe.
you believe it's caused by humans?
I believe we have the least effect on our climate.
Are you
I do believe in climate change.
Drill,
but
baby, drill.
I'm for fracking. I would frack my own head if I thought it would help. I mean, I have a very oily hair.
Open up the Keystone pipeline.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Open up Keystone. Now understand something.
Are you for tax credits for like solar panels, that kind of stuff?
I think they're not mature enough yet, but let them try anyway. I have friends that sell that stuff, and their technology isn't there yet. I wish it was. I wish electric cars did everything they claim. I like Elon. Go Elon. Go Tesla. Genius people. I love you.
So you're saying both?
Side by side. I have a plan. I have a plan.
Don't let the government get involved.
And I asked Mike O'Donnell how to do. Michael O'Donnell how to do this. He was the guy who was a runner-up to Pam. I asked him, how do you get gas prices down to 35 cents a gallon right now? And he showed me, and I went, I can't wait to show you. You got to vote for me though. I'm keeping that one in my back pocket. Gas prices under 35 cents a gallon. I know how to do it. He showed me how to do the math, and I went, okay, let's get this passed. But it's going to be such an explosive thing. I'm not giving yet another idea to Danielle Jurinsky for her to claim as right. That's what I have against her. She takes my ideas. She goes, when I tell her in person, and she took them and she used them, called her own. I'm like, whatever. Don't do that. It's intellectual property theft. There's no jail for it, but I want to benefit the people of this state because they work their asses off and they are entitled to more opportunity. And I don't care what party they claim affiliation. You know who our greatest affiliate is? Or our greatest party is? The unaffiliateds. 22,000 registered unaffiliateds. If I win their vote, I don't need the Democrats.
In House District 42, 22,000?
Yeah. Now the Republicans...
What do you think the independents' greatest concern is? In House District 42.
Cost of living needs to go down. Safety. They can't go out in the streets without... And he recorded this video, so don't blame me. Gail Pugh said, oh, shootings are normal in that neighborhood. Excuse me, which neighborhood are we talking about, Gail? I'm offended by that. Shootings are not normal in any neighborhood. That having been said, safety is a big deal. I think you should be able to send your kids to school. They should be able to come home safe and of the same gender they went in. I get surveys that are like weird. I actually had a survey for the safety of butterflies. I'm not making that up. And I have to fill these out with a straight face because you don't know where you're going to get quoted next from.
You know, the Aurora City Council just passed an ordinance allowing people to have ducks. and it went through the housing committee.
I called that one Duck Duck Goose.
I think it was the housing committee. But, yeah, and then pit bulls. They
Daffy and
huge
Donald
debate
are
around
right
pit bulls. I don't know if you were here then, but They had a huge debate over pit bulls
when I
for
was
like a year and a half in the Aurora City Council.
Where I grew up, Tucson tried to ban pit bulls, and then they realized they had 4 or 5 owners who were just assholes who wouldn't either discipline or train or euthanize their own dogs. Pit bulls by themselves are not, by default, evil creatures. I've had cats that have treated me worse. That doesn't sound quite right. You want the perfect pet, get a fish, you know? I'm kidding.
Okay.
What else we got here?
Yeah. Military.
I love our military. Many of my... I wish I could have served. I didn't serve. I was told early on that I was not eligible because I have Tourette's. Turns out plenty of guys served in the military with Tourette's. My apologies for not at least jumping into the National Guard when I was first married.
Do we have the military-industrial complex? Like what Eisenhower said? Is that a problem? Like these military contractors like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, they're just kind of in bed with the government. It's like, all right, let's go invade this country because
I'm supposed to go on a tour with them next week, or no, 2 weeks from now. And the most hilarious part of them is if you saw a UFO, it wasn't a UFO. We got cool toys being developed at Raytheon. Thank you for playing. Loved Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Fiction. Made by a brilliant man.
So you're pro-military. Should we cut spending on the military, or increase spending, or leave it the way it is? $600 billion a year. I don't
think you can overspend on military.
Okay.
And I'm not saying everybody should. I don't have a gun, folks, but I'm a Second Amendment junkie. Okay. Our NRA is among our heroes. I always jokingly say we need to protect the rights of squirt gun owners. Now, I believe in non-violent weapons in classrooms where teachers must defend themselves against all perpetrators, foreign and domestic. You put a taser in any teacher's hand, and half of our so-called shootings don't happen.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Don't get me started on Columbine.
Everything's been politicized, even the war in Ukraine.
Right. That's weird to me, the whole Russian invasion. Why did he wait? He waited till then to do that. I don't understand that.
Well, I don't watch Fox News, but I heard that they're kind of pro-Russian.
The only rumor I heard, and it was either dispelled or covered, what I heard was Putin was trying to claim that he was trying to liberate a part of the countryside or another country that was complaining that they were being attacked by neo-Nazi nationalists or something. I don't know.
Do you like the idea of the U.S. giving aid to Ukraine to fight Russia?
Not really, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know the whole story there. That's my problem with that. I feel like we're not getting a straight answer.
60 billion, is that you want your taxpayer money? So yeah, you're saying not really.
I feel like we don't have enough information. It's being kept from us. That's one thing about the Biden administration. No matter how many positives people try to spin on that, and I haven't heard a whole lot, I have a hard time believing anything they say. I have a hard time believing what I hear from them.
What can you reach across the aisle on? What can you agree on? Democrats?
You know, as much as I get talked down to by my fellow Republicans, the minute I mentioned professional licensing for movie makers, I had one of the Aryan Sisterhood, I won't say her name, a woman who needs to leave our party, condemn me for the idea of licensing. So, well, licensing is not Republican. I'm like, but look at all the money it's going to generate. Last time I checked, we're about revenue, right? We're about accountability. There's technical accountability. I want to eliminate bad filmmaking, and I want to improve quality education, and 90% of the new curriculum is audiovisual. So you have to have...
So you can agree with Democrats around some regulation on business?
They're going to love my terminology, and they're going to get to know my policies. I'm like a Republican Clinton, except I'm not going to do anything funky with underage women under the table. I'm going to, have my wife, I'll get married eventually again. Hillary Clinton, that story could have been different. Have you seen younger clips of her, like when he was early on? That woman was hot. She didn't get to be corrupt until she met Palpatine from Star Wars. Then things went down. Like I said, I think Michelle Obama was an incredibly smart lady. I just wish she was on a different team. It's like rooting for Derek Jeter. You just wish he was on a different team than the Yankees.
We're going to do a lightning round. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a lightning round.
Okay. Omar Montgomery, if he became Republican, different Aurora. And I lost trust and confidence in him, but right now he runs maybe 40% of the vote in this area.
So you like Omar Montgomery?
I wanted to. I shook hands with the man. He laughed at all my jokes. And then he made some comments that says, well, you're racist. No, you're not the only man in the world who's not racist, Omar. Him and Rhonda. Everyone else is racist but us. As she does her Denzel Washington finger everywhere she goes.
Okay, so
Let's go back to the lightning round. Go ahead.
favorite philosopher.
Philosopher. Anybody?
And you can, I mean, these are tough. Some of these questions are tough. I didn't really talk to you about this beforehand, so.
Anybody?
If you can't think, if you can't think of someone, you can just pass.
Any century?
Any century.
Just anything. Favorite philosopher?
Could be your dad, it could be.
Well, he was an incredibly wise guy. He died at 46, so imagine that much wisdom that soon. Because I'm 49 now. Philosopher. Well, there's two guys that come to mind. Oh, heck, I'll just say it. Coach Lute Olson, best known as the Hall of Fame coach of the University of Arizona and Iowa, the Wildcats and the Hawkeyes in his respective lifetime. He died a couple years ago. College basketball. College basketball. Beloved where he is.
UConn fan.
I understand. Well, we talked about that already. I loved Jim Calhoun. Those guys were two men cut from the same cloth.
I'll never forget the first national championship they won.
I was rooting for them.
Against Duke?
Yes.
Against Duke? Yeah. Favorite
What else we got?
Favorite book?
Favorite book? Well, I almost said Loot the Seasons of My Life, but I'm going to be more creative right now. I'm going to go with... No, I'm not going to use Stephen King. I almost went with The Stand. I actually read the whole thing when I was about 13. My mom said, why don't you go read a book? She was trying to get rid of me. I read The Stand. You were still reading that?
Do you read a lot? Or did you?
I do. What I don't do is I don't, because I got into publishing, I skim more than I read. I do a lot of research. I'm like a paralegal. My manager, as an agent manager, he calls me the most dangerous creative writer he's ever met.
You've written a lot of books.
I've written 20 books.
He's written 20 books. I can't believe we're just mentioning that now.
Yeah, no, I thought I was going to be a novelist and a publisher first, who acted and who produced over time, and that I would become famous. Like, there are countries in the world where I'm famous. This isn't one of them.
And he was considered for 2 Pulitzer Prizes.
3 Pulitzer nominations, or considerations are called. One as the publisher and 2 as a co-author. He published life story of my dad's story with Lute Olson's, and one with a guy named Eddie Smith, who was a Denver Nugget of all things. He was the first draft pick out of the 1980s Arizona Wildcats when they rebuilt the basketball program. Under Coach Olson, he and a couple other guys were the first NBA draft picks. And Tucson still doesn't just talk about them. There's like art all over the place of these guys. March Madness revenue rebuilt that place. Much like I want to bring movie DNA to do this to this place. If you've ever been to Burbank, California, with its own airport, Burbank is surrounded by 3 shithole communities of, name it, bad goes there. Burbank itself is gorgeous. What keeps it gorgeous? You got NBC Studios and you've got Walt Disney Corporation. And Disney came from Missouri. So it can be done. That's what I keep telling people here. I'm here now. I've got 24 months to organize, and I'm going to bring in people to replace me as I keep doing other stuff. Because again, I'm not just going to sit here, retire, get fat, and die like some people do. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. Next question. Yeah, I've written a bunch of books.
If you didn't live in Colorado, aside from Colorado being your favorite state, we know that you lived in Arizona and California. If you didn't live in Colorado, which state would you live in and why?
New York. I always felt like a DNA Manhattan guy. I'd still root for my same teams, but I'm a big city fella. When people talk about, oh, I just love the farm and the rural and being out with the cows, and give me the Seinfeld looking life. Give me the deli downstairs. Yeah, I like my space, but I like it surrounded by a big city environment. I was going to go to either Boston or New York, and the Lord closed the door and said, stay here and do this, because I was going to go. And I'm like, Lord, I don't understand what's happening. He goes, you're going to run right here. You're going to do this right here. You might travel there later to visit, but I'm going to use you right here. I'm like, okay. Hands and feet belong to him. That's where I would go. Because I am a big personality New York kind of guy. And I didn't really discover my accent until I got out of high school. Because in Tucson, we invented cow tipping, see? We are more redneck than Texans, see? We invented cow tipping. We said, tip your waitress.
Is it kind of redneck in Tucson?
Oh my God. The only thing more populated than the Latino population, mostly Spanish, blonde hair, blue-eyed Spanish, and you've got the
blonde hair.
We've got a very oppressive, racist I grew up being picked on by blonde-haired, blue-eyed Spaniards left over from the...
Is there a lot of segregation?
Oh my God, it's terrible. So everybody gets picked on equally. Everybody gets bullied equally racially by the Spaniards. And then you've got the Mexicans who come up and are extremely nice. The difference between... When I hear Mexican, I hear fighting your ass off for your place in the economy. When I hear Spaniard, I hear Hitler would have loved you. Because Santa Anna was cut from the cloth of... Hitler loved guys like Santa Anna, if you know who I'm talking about. Santa Anna was the guy who got beat by Sam Houston. The Battle of the Alamo, and the new word got to Washington of what happened at the Alamo, and they authorized Sam Houston to go in, capture Anna, and basically say, no, I'm being nice there. Ethnic supremacy has no place in a prosperous economy or culture. And in Tucson, that's what we had. We had a lot of... I had 60% of my graduating class in high school was illegal immigrant. But of those who were there, who managed to get visas or were there long enough, a lot of prosperity through what I'll say the very... respectable Latino culture. Unfortunately, Latino seems to incorporate so much, and you had Spanish supremacy that just destroyed, they sabotaged everything. And when they exhausted their resources, they left. So everybody kind of, when I hear about minorities, I'm like, who's talking about the Russians? Especially the Southern Russians. Lithuania loves us. That's where I'm famous, by the way. Kevin Sorbo is famous there. We wrote a couple of books together. We had the same management once upon a time. So we had connected about 10, 15 years ago. And the Koreans, nobody's speaking for the Koreans and the Malaysians and the Persians in this district. I'm going to. I don't hear any of that out of the current standing incumbent Democrats. The B's trying to tell me something, right?
Another B. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? This changes all the time. Right now, I'm going to go with Dead Poets Society. When I was a kid, it was Star Wars. That has long since changed. Shakespeare in Love for a few years. It's funny. The B landed right on the poster. We must be sweet.
Favorite president?
Favorite president? See if he gets a hint. Favorite, sentimental favorite, George W. Bush. Donald Trump, maybe Abraham Lincoln in there. Lincoln was hated in his own lifetime. Most people forget that, folks. He was hated until he was gone, and then somebody put his face on a mountain. I hope to serve you guys so much.
Why Donald Trump?
I'll get there in a second. That you put me on Rushmore and right next to whoever I'm married to. Because whoever I'm going to be married to next, that's going to be one tough cookie. One hot version of Eleanor Roosevelt. All right. Why Trump? Like even on the list? I have a New York sense of humor. I laugh. I find him so amusing and funny and warm. He's 6'2" blonde. I relate to him. He had a rich, famous daddy. My dad, they named a street after him in 1998 for his work on killing the drug trade. Do you realize that Miami Vice was only Miami because his crew was so successful in Arizona, it forced the drug dealers to all move east? That's a true story. They named a street after my pop in 98. If there was ever such a thing as a man of God in uniform, my dad was it. So I try to be my father's son. As far as Donald Trump goes, I see the same guy. When you guys see other things, I'm sorry. I don't see that and I don't agree with that. Not everybody gets a New York sense of humor, but let me tell you something. To get into the run for the presidency in 2016, he had to turn down season, I think it was 10, of Celebrity Apprentice. He turned it down and said, no, this is more important. He never took a paycheck. He was so wealthy he didn't have to, but he never took a paycheck. Other people have. I'm pretty sure Biden pays himself. Not that I'm going to sit here and kick. I think Biden is one of the biggest mistakes we're going to say we made, but he's not the worst president ever. For the worst president, you have to go to the 19th century. History tells us we have overcome bad kings. We're that strong as Americans. And I prayed about that when he got elected. I'm like, Lord, what? What do we do? Because I have blessed my children under the governance of bad kings. I thought, well, that's true. Anybody who's read their Bible knows that. What else you got?
Do you have a favorite podcast? Do you listen to podcasts?
I haven't had time to
do you
get
have a
cozy
YouTube channel?
I do.
I have like.
Well, I have several that I use. I'm so busy making content, I haven't had time to subscribe to other people's stuff. When I want to relax, I stream.
Where can we go for your content?
Oh gosh, I'm all over the web. Just Google my name and my stuff pops up. My stage name, which I still use on and off in politics, this was meant to be a Montessori teaching tool for the saying of my name, Cory Parella, the storyteller. Taken directly from Donna Rosanna Donna on Saturday Night Live. It's to force you to say the name correctly. So if you say it's storyteller, you're mispronouncing it. Storyteller.